Captain Jake Morrison stood at the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, looking out at the massive space station ahead. The Galactic Council headquarters was bigger than anything humans had ever built. It stretched for miles in every direction with towers that sparkled like diamonds against the black of space. Ships from a dozen different alien races docked at various ports around the station. This was humanity's big moment. Jake adjusted his dress uniform and checked his watch. In 30 minutes, he would meet with the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Earth had spent 5 years preparing for this moment. The best scientists, diplomats, and military officers had worked together to create the perfect presentation. They had to show that humanity deserved a place among the stars. Dr. Lisa Carter walked up beside him, carrying a datapad filled with charts and graphs. She was the smartest person Jake had ever met. Her work in xenobiology had helped humans understand alien life forms better than anyone thought possible. She looked nervous but determined. "The presentation is ready, Captain," she said in a quiet voice. "We have everything they asked for. Our technology reports, social structure analysis, and military capabilities. Everything shows we're ready for membership." Jake nodded, but felt a knot in his stomach. The aliens had been polite during the early meetings, but something felt wrong. Their questions seemed designed to find weaknesses rather than strengths. The way they looked at humans reminded him of how people might look at insects. Commander Rick Stone joined them on the bridge. He was Jake's oldest friend and most trusted officer. Rick had fought beside Jake in the Mars Colony Wars and saved his life more times than he could count. If anyone could read a dangerous situation, it was Rick. "I don't like this, Jake," Rick sighed quietly. "The security scans they ran on our ship were too detailed. They studied our weapons, our shields, even our food supplies. It's not normal procedure for a membership application." The communication system crackled to life. A cold mechanical voice spoke in perfect English. "Human Vessel Enterprise, you are cleared for Docking Bay 7. Your delegation will be escorted to the council chambers immediately upon arrival." Jake took a deep breath. "This is it, people. Remember, we're not just representing ourselves. We're representing all of humanity. Every man, woman, and child on Earth is counting on us." The docking procedure took 20 minutes. Jake had never seen technology so advanced. The space station's computers took complete control of their ship and guided it into the docking bay with perfect precision. Mechanical arms extended from the walls and locked onto their hull with a sound like thunder. An escort of 6 alien guards waited for them at the airlock. They were tall, thin creatures with pale blue skin and large black eyes. They wore no weapons, but Jake could sense they were dangerous. The guards said nothing as they led the human delegation through endless corridors. The council chambers were enormous. 12 raised platforms surrounded a central speaking area where Jake and his team would make their presentation. Each platform held representatives from a different alien species. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange. Jake couldn't tell which end was their head. Prime Minister Voxtel of the Zethkari sat on the highest platform. He was a reptilian creature with golden scales and cold yellow eyes. His voice echoed through the chamber when he spoke. "Humans of Earth, you have requested membership in the Galactic Council. We have studied your species for the past several months. You may now present your case." Jake stepped forward and activated the holographic display. Images of Earth appeared showing great cities, advanced technology, and peaceful cooperation between different nations. Dr. Carter provided expert commentary while Commander Stone explained their military capabilities. "We offer the galaxy our knowledge, our strength, and our commitment to peace," Jake concluded. "Humanity has overcome war, poverty, and environmental destruction. We have learned to work together as one species. We believe we can contribute greatly to galactic civilization." The council members whispered among themselves in languages Jake couldn't understand. Their voices created a strange buzzing sound that made his skin crawl. After several long minutes, Prime Minister Voxtal raised his hand for silence. "The council has reached a decision," he announced. "We have carefully evaluated your species' technological development, social structure, and military potential. Our conclusion is unanimous." Jake felt his heart racing. This was the moment that would change human history forever. "Humanity is classified as a Category 7 primitive species," Voxtal continued. "You are denied membership in the Galactic Council. Furthermore, your species is restricted to your home solar system. Any attempt to expand beyond these boundaries will be met with force." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Category 7 primitive species. He had studied the classification system. It was reserved for the most backward civilizations in the galaxy. Species that couldn't even achieve spaceflight. Ambassador Sylphon from the Altarian Republic stood up. He was a tall gray creature, with no visible emotions on his face. His voice was filled with contempt when he spoke. "Your species shows all the signs of a failed evolutionary branch," he said coldly. "You are violent, unpredictable, and technologically inferior. You wage war among yourselves over trivial differences. Your planet is polluted and overpopulated. You have contributed nothing of value to galactic civilization." Jake tried to speak, but Sylphan continued. "Humans are barely evolved primates who have stumbled into space, travel through accident rather than intelligence. Your presence would contaminate the advanced societies we have built over thousands of years. The Council's decision is final." The chamber fell silent. Jake felt the weight of failure crushing down on him. Billions of humans had dreamed of joining the galactic community. Now those dreams were shattered. "An energy barrier will be placed around your solar system," Voxtal announced. "One patrol ship will monitor your activities. Any violation of the containment order will result in the complete destruction of your species." The guards stepped forward, indicating the meeting was over. Jake and his team were escorted back to their ship in stunned silence. The dreams of humanity reaching for the stars had been crushed in a single moment. As the Enterprise undocked from the station, Jake stood at the bridge, watching the massive structure disappear into the distance. Dr. Carter sat at her station with tears in her eyes. Commander Stone's jaw was clenched in anger. "What do we tell Earth?" Carter asked quietly. Jake stared out at the stars that were now forbidden to humanity. Something deep inside him began to burn. It wasn't despair or defeat. It was something much more dangerous. It was determination. "We tell them the truth," he said finally. "The galaxy doesn't want us as equals. They see us as primitive animals to be caged, but they've made one critical mistake." "What's that?" Rick asked. Jake turned to face his crew. His eyes burned with quiet fury. "They've underestimated what humans do when we're backed into a corner. They think they can cage us like animals. They're about to learn that caging a predator only makes it more dangerous." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Jake spent every moment planning. The galaxy had rejected humanity, but they had also revealed their greatest weakness. They were arrogant. They believed their own superiority so completely that they couldn't imagine being threatened by a primitive species. That arrogance would be their downfall. 5 years had passed since the rejection. Captain Jake Morrison floated in the zero gravity of the hidden shipyard, deep in the asteroid belt. Around him, dozens of workers in spacesuits welded metal plates and installed weapon systems on ships that officially did not exist. The Galactic Council believed humanity had accepted their place as a quarantine species. They were wrong. Amy Rodriguez drifted up beside Jake, holding a tablet showing ship designs. At 25, she was the youngest. Chief engineer in human history, but her mind worked in ways that amazed even the most experienced scientists. She had spent 3 years developing stealth technology that could fool Council sensors. "The coding is perfect, Captain," she said with excitement in her voice. "Their scanners look for metal signatures and energy patterns. Our ships use a carbon fiber composite that appears as space debris. The power systems run cold until we need them. To their sensors, we're just floating rocks." Jake nodded as he watched workers install the final systems on the lead ship. The vessel looked nothing like traditional human spacecraft. It was angular and dark with no visible weapons or engines. Everything was hidden beneath the stealth coating that Amy had designed. Dr. Lisa Carter joined them at the observation window. She had changed over the past 5 years. The rejection had hardened her into someone who saw the galaxy with cold, calculating eyes. Her research into alien biology had taken a darker turn as she searched for weaknesses in Council species. "The Watchkeeper patrol ship follows the same route every day," she reported. "Single crew of 12. Standard Council shields and weapons. They scan our inner system twice per day, but never venture past Mars. Their arrogance makes them predictable." Commander Rick Stone floated over from the weapons testing area. His hair had turned gray during the years of secret preparation, but his eyes burned with the same intensity as always. He carried a plasma rifle that looked different from anything in the human arsenal. "The new weapons use their own power sources against them," he explained. "Council energy shields are designed to stop kinetic weapons and standard lasers. These plasma bursts actually feed off their shield energy, making them stronger the more they try to defend themselves." The secret project had consumed Earth's resources for 5 years. While the Council believed humans were slowly accepting their imprisonment, the truth was far different. Every major nation had contributed to the Shadow Fleet Initiative. Scientists, engineers, and military personnel worked around the clock, too. Build weapons that could challenge galactic civilization. Jake activated his communicator. "All department heads report to the command center. Today, we test everything we've built." The command center was carved into the largest asteroid in the belt. Hundreds of technicians monitored screens showing ship positions, weapon systems, and communication networks. At the center of it all sat the tactical display showing the position of every Council ship within 50 light years. Colonel Ben Hayes stood at the display, pointing to various targets. He was a veteran of every major conflict in human history, and the man Jake trusted to train their new soldiers. His weathered face showed no emotion as he explained the mission. "The Watchkeeper makes its daily patrol in 6 hours," he said. "We intercepted here, near Jupiter's 4th moon. Quick strike, capture the crew, take the ship intact. Intelligence gathering is the priority." Dr. Helen Park stepped forward from the science station. She was the physicist who had made their faster-than-light drives possible. Her work had advanced human technology by decades in just 5 years. "The capture nets are ready," she reported. "Electromagnetic pulses will disable their systems without destroying the ship. We need their computers, their weapons, everything. Every piece of Council technology teaches us more about their weaknesses." Jake looked around the room at the faces of men and women who had sacrificed everything for this moment. They had worked in secret while the world above believed they were defeated. They had pushed human technology beyond anything the Council thought possible. "Remember, this is not revenge," he said quietly. "This is survival. They caged us because they feared what we might become. Today, we show them their fear was justified." The attack fleet consisted of 12 stealth ships, each carrying a crew of 20. Jake commanded the lead vessel with Rick at his side. The ships moved through space like ghosts, leaving no trace of their passage. The Watchkeeper appeared on their sensors exactly where intelligence had predicted. The Council ship was massive compared to the human vessels, but it moved with a lazy Confidence of a predator that had never faced real danger. All ships in position, Rick reported. Target is unaware of our presence. Jake felt his heart pounding. This moment would change everything. Either humanity would take its first step toward freedom, or they would all die trying. Fire, he ordered. The stealth ships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma bursts struck the watchkeepers' shields, causing them to flare and collapse. The Council. Ships' weapons tried to respond, but the electromagnetic pulse had already disabled their targeting systems. Within minutes, the alien vessel was dead in space. Jake watched through the viewscreen as human soldiers in armored suits cut through the hull. The Council crew offered no resistance. They seemed unable to understand what was happening. Capture complete, came the report. 12 alien prisoners. Secured, ship systems intact and ready for analysis. Jake allowed himself a small smile. The first phase was complete. But this was just the beginning. Dr. Carter's team spent 3 days analyzing every system on the captured ship. What they found exceeded their expectations. The Council's technology was advanced, but it was also old. Their ships hadn't been upgraded in decades because they faced no real threats. They're complacent, Carter reported. Their shields can't adapt to new weapons. Their sensors scan for known threats, but ignore anything unfamiliar. They've been the dominant power for so long they've forgotten how to fight. Amy discovered something even more important. The ship's computer contained navigation data for the entire Council fleet. Supply routes, patrol schedules, even the locations of secret bases. The aliens had never considered that anyone might capture one of their ships. We can hit them anywhere, she said with growing excitement. Their own data shows us exactly where they're vulnerable. Jake stood in the captured ship's bridge, studying the alien controls. Everything was designed for comfort rather than efficiency. The Council had grown soft in their dominance. Stage the destruction, he ordered. Make it look like an engine. Failure. They need to believe their ship simply broke down. The demolition was carefully planned. Human engineers planted charges that would create the same energy signature as an engine explosion. When the watchkeeper's wreckage was found, it would appear to be a tragic accident. But Jake had bigger plans. The captured data revealed something. That changed everything. The Council had rejected dozens of species over the centuries. Entire civilizations had been classified as primitive and restricted to their home systems. Many of those species had technology that rivaled or exceeded Council capabilities. We're not alone, Jake told his senior staff. There are others out there who've been cast aside just like us. Others who have reason to hate the Council as much as we do. Over the following months, human ships began making contact with the forgotten species. The Vaxari had been rejected for being too aggressive. The Xanthari were deemed too unpredictable. The Corvani were considered too primitive, despite having mastered energy manipulation. Each species brought their own strengths to the growing alliance. The Vaxari had warrior traditions that made them natural soldiers. The Xanthari understood stealth and sabotage. The Corvani could manipulate energy in ways that amazed human scientists. They underestimated all of us, Jake said during a secret meeting with allied leaders. They thought they could keep us separated and weak. Instead, they've created an army of enemies. The alliance grew stronger each day. Ships and resources were shared freely. Scientists from different species worked together to develop new technologies. What had started as humanity's rebellion was becoming something much larger. Rick stood beside Jake, watching allied ships dock at the hidden bases. They're going to figure out what we're doing eventually, he said. Jake nodded. Let them. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late. We're not the same species they rejected 5 years ago. We've evolved into something they can't understand or control. The galaxy was about to learn that casting humanity aside had been the greatest mistake in its history. The anniversary of humanity's rejection arrived with fire and chaos across the galaxy. On 12 major Council worlds, alarms screamed as space stations vanished from sensors and supply convoys simply disappeared. The attacks happened simultaneously, across thousands of light years with precision that should have been impossible. Prime Minister Voxtall stood in the Council's emergency chamber, watching reports flood in from across their territory. The holographic display showed red markers spreading like an infection through their space. Each marker represented a successful strike against Council assets. "This is impossible," declared Admiral Krianax as he studied the tactical reports. "No single species has the capability to coordinate attacks on this scale. The distances involved would require hundreds of ships and perfect timing." Ambassador Sylphan activated another display showing security footage from the attacks. The images were grainy, but clear enough to show sleek, dark ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. They struck with devastating precision, then vanished back into space. "The energy signatures are consistent with human technology," Sylphan reported. "But how could those primitives have developed such advanced capabilities? We quarantined them 5 years ago. They should still be struggling with basic space travel." At each attack site, the invaders left the same message burned into metal bulkheads or broadcast on all frequencies. "Category 7 primitive species sends regards." The insult was clear and intentional. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the aftermath of the coordinated strikes. Around him, holographic displays showed the success of each operation. Not a single Allied ship had been lost, while Council losses were catastrophic. "Phase 1 complete," reported Commander Rick Stone. "All primary targets destroyed or disabled." Enemy response time was exactly as predicted. They're completely unprepared for this level of warfare. Dr. Lisa Carter activated her station, showing biological scans from the attacks. "Council casualties are minimal. We disabled their ships and stations, but most crew members survived. This sends the message that we're not mindless killers." Jake nodded. The restraint was intentional. Humanity wanted to be feared, but not hated. The goal was to force respect through superior capability, not through genocide. Amy Rodriguez drifted over from the engineering station. "Council communications are going crazy. They're sending emergency signals to every military base in their territory. Admiral Krianax has been given command of their largest fleet." "How large?" Jake asked. 200 ships, including their newest dreadnoughts. "They're assembling at the Alterian system for a strike against Earth." Jake felt a cold smile cross his face. The Council was reacting exactly as predicted. Their arrogance demanded immediate retaliation. They couldn't accept that primitive humans had outsmarted them. "Send word to all Allied fleets," he ordered. "The trap is set. Time to show them what happens when you corner a predator." The Council's response fleet was the largest military force assembled in galactic history. Admiral Krianax commanded from the massive dreadnought Dominion, surrounded by the finest ships and crews in known space. His confidence was absolute. "These humans have gotten lucky with a few raids," he told his officers. "They've used stealth and surprise to attack soft targets. When they face real military power, they'll crumble like all primitives do." The fleet entered the Sol system, expecting to find a desperate enemy hiding behind Earth's defenses. Instead, they found empty space. No defensive fleet protected the human homeworld. No orbital stations bristled with weapons. Earth seemed completely defenseless. "Where are they?" demanded the Admiral as his ships spread through the system. "Scan everything. They must be hiding somewhere." The answer came from the space around them. Jake's shadow fleet emerged from stealth like phantoms materializing from the void. The human ships had been waiting in perfect ambush positions throughout the system. "All ships fire," Jake commanded. The battle erupted with violence that shook the fabric of space itself. Human plasma weapons tore through Council shields, while their stealth technology made targeting impossible. The enemy's superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't hit what they couldn't see. Admiral Kryanax watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically destroyed. Ships that had never known defeat burned around him, while his weapons fired uselessly at shadows. The primitive humans were fighting like nothing he had ever encountered. How is this possible? He screamed at his tactical officer. They're primitives. They should be cowering in fear, not destroying our fleet. Colonel Ben Hayes led a boarding party against the Admiral's flagship. His soldiers moved through the ship's corridors with deadly efficiency. Council troops tried to resist, but human weapons and tactics were beyond their experience. Bridge secured, Hayes reported. Admiral Kryanax is cornered in his command center. Jake's voice crackled over the communicator. Take him alive if possible. We want prisoners, not martyrs. The final confrontation took place on the bridge of the dying dreadnought. Admiral Kryanax stood surrounded by his fallen officers refusing to surrender. His scaled face showed confusion and rage as he faced the human colonel. You're supposed to be primitive, he snarled. We classified you as barely evolved animals. How did you do this? Hayes looked at the Admiral with cold eyes. You made the mistake of judging us by your own standards. You thought being primitive meant being weak. You were wrong. The Admiral's death came as his ship's reactor overloaded. Jake watched from his bridge as the massive dreadnought exploded in a ball of fire that briefly outshone the sun. Only a handful of Council ships escaped to carry word of the disaster. Broadcast the message. Jake ordered. Amy activated the Galactic Communication Network. Jake's image appeared on screens throughout Council space. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of absolute authority. People of the galaxy, you called us primitive. You cast us aside. You tried to cage us like animals. Today you learned what happens when you underestimate humanity. We are no longer asking for recognition. We are taking it. The broadcast continued, with footage from the battle. Council viewers watched their most powerful fleet destroyed by the species they had dismissed as backward primitives. The images sent shockwaves through every world in their territory. This is only the beginning, Jake continued. For too long the Council has suppressed and enslaved younger species. They have decided who lives and who dies based on their own prejudices. That ends now. On the Council homeworld, Prime Minister Voxtel watched the broadcast with growing fear. The human captain's words carried a threat that chilled him to his core. The galaxy belongs to all thinking beings, not just those who claim superiority through age and arrogance. You have a choice. Accept us as equals, or face the consequences of your continued oppression. The broadcast ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. The impossible had happened. A quarantined primitive species had defeated the Council's greatest military force. The balance of power had shifted in a single day. Dr. Carter stood beside Jake watching the tactical display. Red markers showed Council fleets moving throughout their territory. The enemy was mobilizing everything they had. They'll never accept defeat, she said quietly. This means total war. Jake nodded. He had hoped the demonstration would force the Council to negotiate. Instead, their pride demanded continued conflict. Then we give them war, he replied, but not the kind they expect. We've spent 5 years learning their weaknesses. Now we use that knowledge to tear their empire apart. Rick activated the communication system. All allied fleets report ready for Phase 2. Our friends have been waiting for this moment. The holographic display showed dozens of species rising in rebellion across Council space. The Vaxari attacked border outposts. The Zenthari sabotaged supply lines. The Corvani disabled communication networks. What had begun as humanity's fight for freedom had become a galaxy-wide revolution. They created this alliance when they cast us aside, Jake told his crew. Every species they rejected, every world they oppressed, every civilization they destroyed, all of it has led to this moment. The galaxy burned with the fire of revolution. Ancient empires trembled as forgotten species emerged from the shadows. The Council's reign of supremacy was ending, and from its ashes would rise something new. Jake stood at the bridge window watching Earth turn slowly below. The blue and green world looked peaceful, but appearances were deceiving. Humanity had evolved beyond what anyone thought possible. They had become something the galaxy had never seen before. "Sir," Amy called from her station, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 council worlds. They're asking for protection from their own government." Jake smiled. The revolution was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Soon the council would face the same choice they had given humanity 5 years ago. Accept their new place in the galaxy or face extinction. The primitives had become the masters. The galaxy would never be the same. The galaxy had split into 2 massive factions, and war raged across 1,000 worlds. The Council's remaining loyalists fought desperately against the growing rebellion, while neutral species chose sides based on fear rather than loyalty. Every day brought news of fresh battles and shifting alliances. War Chief Gorth of the Krillian Empire stood before the Council's emergency assembly. His massive frame towered over the alien representatives as his scarred face showed the contempt he felt for their weakness. The Krillians had remained neutral until now, but the changing balance of power demanded action. "The Council bleeds from 1,000 wounds," he growled in his rough voice. "Your fleets burn while primitive species mock your authority. You need warriors who understand real warfare." Prime Minister Voxdal looked up at the intimidating figure. The Krillians were known throughout the galaxy as the most feared military force in existence. Their warrior culture had produced soldiers who lived only for battle and conquest. "What do you want in return?" Voxdal asked. 3 systems in the Outer Rim and complete autonomy for Krillian forces. We fight by our own rules, using our own methods. You give us targets and we destroy them. The agreement was signed within hours. The Council's desperation overcame their usual caution about dealing with the violent Krillians. They needed allies who could match human ruthlessness with their own brand of savagery. Captain Jake Morrison received the intelligence report while reviewing battle plans in his command center. The news of the Krillian alliance sent ripples of concern through the human leadership. "How many ships?" he asked Amy Rodriguez, who was analyzing the tactical data. 50,000 warriors spread across 300 vessels. They specialize in boarding actions and ground combat. Their reputation for brutality is legendary. Commander Rick Stone studied the enemy profiles. They're not like the Council forces. These are professional killers who have been fighting for centuries. They won't break easily. Dr. Lisa Carter activated her biological database. Krillian physiology is designed for combat. Enhanced strength, natural armor plating, redundant organs. They're harder to kill than most species. Jake nodded grimly. The war was escalating beyond anything he had imagined. What started as humanity's fight for recognition had become a galactic conflict that would reshape civilization itself. "Signal all allied fleets," he ordered. "The Krillians are moving toward Alpha Centauri. If they take our first colony, it will be a devastating blow to morale." The battle for Alpha Centauri began 3 days later. The Krillian fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, with their warrior ships bristling with weapons. War Chief Gorth commanded from his flagship, while his subordinates prepared for the kind of brutal combat they lived for. Colonel Ben Hayes waited in the defensive positions around the colony world. His ground forces had spent months preparing for this moment. The planet's surface was covered with hidden weapon emplacements and defensive bunkers. "They'll try to land troops," he told his officers. "Corellians prefer close combat to long-range bombardment. We use that against them." The space battle raged for hours as human stealth ships harassed the larger Corellian fleet. Amy's advanced. Weapon systems proved effective against enemy armor, but the Corellians fought with a ferocity that surprised even veteran human soldiers. "They're not running," reported Rick from the Fleet Tactical Center. "Every other species retreats when they take heavy losses." These warriors seemed to enjoy the challenge. Jake watched the battle displays with growing concern. Human casualties were mounting, while the Corellians pressed their attack with relentless determination. This was a different kind of enemy than the overconfident Council forces. The first Corellian troops landed on Alpha Centauri's surface in drop pods that crashed through the atmosphere like meteors. The warriors emerged from their pods, ready for combat, while human defenders opened fire from concealed positions. Hayes led the defensive response personally. His soldiers used advanced weapons and superior tactics, but the Corellians fought with a savagery that was almost supernatural. Individual warriors continued attacking even after taking wounds that should have been fatal. "Fall back to secondary positions," Hayes ordered as his front lines came under pressure. "Let them advance into the kill zones." The fighting on Alpha Centauri became legendary. Human technology faced Corellian warrior spirit in battles that raged across the planet's surface. Cities burned while soldiers from both sides fought with desperate determination. Dr. Helen Park worked frantically in her laboratory, developing new weapon systems. The traditional approaches weren't working against enemies who seemed to welcome pain and death. "I need something that disables rather than kills," she told her research team. "These warriors are too tough for conventional weapons." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Park's team discovered that Corellian nervous systems were vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies. The same neural pathways that made them fearless warriors could be disrupted by the right kind of energy. "Pulse. Neural disruptors," Park announced. "They interfere with brain function without causing permanent damage. The warriors will be helpless, but alive." Jake approved the new weapons immediately. The neural disruptors were rushed to the battlefield, where they proved devastatingly effective. Corellian warriors who had shrugged off laser burns and plasma wounds collapsed helplessly when hit by the electromagnetic pulses. The tide of battle shifted dramatically. Human forces began capturing enemy positions while Corellian commanders struggled to understand what was happening to their troops. War Chief Gorth himself was taken prisoner when his command bunker was overrun. Hayes personally conducted the interrogation of the captured war chief. The massive alien warrior sat in restraints that could have held a small vehicle, while his scarred face showed grudging respect for his captors. "You fight well for primitives," Gorth admitted. "Your warriors have honor, even if your methods are strange." "We don't fight for honor," Hayes replied. "We fight for survival. Your council allies wanted to cage us like animals. We're showing them what happens when you corner a predator." The Corellian leader's eyes narrowed. "The council are not our allies. They are weak creatures who hired us to do their fighting. We care nothing for their cause." Hayes sensed an opportunity. "Then why fight for them? Your warriors are dying for people who despise you. Because we are warriors, we fight. It is what we do. You could fight for a cause that matters. The Council has oppressed dozens of species. They've destroyed entire civilizations because they didn't fit their narrow definition of worthiness." Gorth was quiet for a long moment. "What do you offer?" "A chance to fight against real oppression. The Council has ruled through fear and arrogance for too long. Help us tear down their empire and build something better." The negotiation took days, but eventually War Chief Gorth made his decision. The Krillian Empire would switch sides in exchange for the right to settle 3 systems and complete autonomy. More importantly, they would bring detailed intelligence about Council military capabilities. The Council's greatest weakness is their arrogance, Gorth explained to Jake and his staff. They believe their own propaganda about being superior. They have not faced real opposition for so long they have forgotten how to adapt. The intelligence proved invaluable. Gorth's knowledge of Council fleet movements and defensive positions allowed human forces to plan devastating strikes. The war began to shift decisively in favor of the rebellion. Jake stood in the command center, watching reports flow in from across the galaxy. Dozens of worlds had declared independence from the Council. Allied fleets were advancing on major enemy strongholds. The revolution was succeeding beyond his wildest dreams. The Council is calling for a general mobilization, Amy reported. They're pulling troops from occupation duty to defend their core worlds. Rick studied the tactical display. That creates opportunities. Oppressed species on those worlds will see the reduced security as a chance to rebel. Dr. Carter activated her communication station. We're receiving surrender offers from Council military commanders. Some of them want to switch sides rather than face certain defeat. Jake nodded. The momentum was building. Each victory brought new allies while enemy morale collapsed. The galaxy was witnessing the fall of an empire that had seemed invincible. Signal all allied forces, he ordered. Prepare for the final offensive. We're going to end this war by striking at the heart of Council power. The plan was audacious beyond measure. Human and allied fleets would coordinate a massive assault on the Council's capital world. If successful, it would decapitate the enemy government and force a final surrender. It's risky, Hayes warned. The capital will be heavily defended. We could lose everything in a single battle. Jake looked around the command center at the faces of men and women who had sacrificed everything for this moment. They had come so far from the species that had been rejected and caged 5 years ago. The Council made their choice when they cast us aside, he said firmly. They could have welcomed us as equals. Instead, they chose to treat us as animals. Now they face the consequences of that decision. The final battle for the galaxy was about to begin. Humanity had evolved from outcasts to leaders of a galactic revolution. The primitive species had become the masters of their own destiny. War Chief Gorth stood. The final assault on the Council's capital world began at dawn across 1,000 time zones. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the largest fleet in galactic history emerge from hyperspace around Zethkar Prime. Human ships flew alongside vessels from dozens of allied species, all united in their determination to end Council rule forever. The enemy had prepared for this moment. The capital world bristled with defensive platforms and energy shields, while the surviving Council fleet formed protective formations around the planet. Prime Minister Vokstall had gathered every loyal ship and soldier for this final battle. Planetary shields are at maximum strength, reported Amy Rodriguez from our engineering station. They're using the same technology that kept us quarantined. The irony is almost perfect. Commander Rick Stone studied the tactical display showing enemy positions. They have 600 ships plus orbital defenses. It's going to be the bloodiest battle in galactic history. Jake activated the fleet communication system. His voice reached every ship in the massive armada. Today we finish what they started 5 years ago. They called us primitive. They caged us like animals. They thought they could decide our fate without consequence. Today we prove them wrong. The battle began with simultaneous attacks across the entire system. Human stealth ships struck at defensive platforms, while allied vessels engaged the Council fleet in massive space battles. The fabric of space itself seemed to burn as weapons fire lit up the darkness. Dr. Lisa Carter worked frantically at her science station, coordinating the most complex operation in human history. Every detail had been planned and rehearsed, but the scale of the battle was beyond anything they had attempted. "Broadcasting on all frequencies," she announced. "The evidence packets are reaching every world in the galaxy." The broadcast was Carter's masterpiece. Years of research had uncovered the Council's darkest secrets. The transmission showed proof of genocide, slavery, and systematic oppression spanning millennia. Worlds that had supported the Council began to question their loyalty. "Council fleet. Delta 7 is requesting permission to surrender," came a report from the communication center. "They're saying they refuse to fight for a government that has committed such crimes." Jake felt a surge of hope. The psychological warfare was working. Enemy fleets were switching sides faster than the Council could respond. The revelation of their crimes was destroying their moral authority. On the planet's surface, Prime Minister Vox Stahl watched his empire crumble from the safety of his underground bunker. The evidence being broadcast across the galaxy was damning, but true. The Council had maintained power through fear and oppression for so long that they had forgotten any other way. "Sir," his aide reported with trembling voice, 17 more systems have declared independence. The Alterian Republic is requesting terms for surrender." Voxtal's scaled face showed the weight of defeat. How did those primitives obtain such? "Detailed records? Unknown, sir. The intelligence appears to come from multiple sources, including our own classified archives." The truth was that humanity's allies had been gathering evidence for years. Every species the Council had oppressed had kept records of their suffering. The broadcast was not just human propaganda, but testimony from hundreds of civilizations. War Chief Gorth led the ground assault on the capital city. His Krillian warriors fought alongside human soldiers in an operation that would have been impossible without their alliance. The streets of the ancient city became a battlefield as desperate Council forces made their final stand. Colonel Ben Hayes coordinated the urban combat from his mobile command post. The fighting was intense, but the defenders lacked the will to continue. Many Council troops were surrendering rather than die for a cause they no longer believed in. "Resistance is collapsing," Hayes reported. "Enemy forces are retreating to the government complex. We should have the capital secured within hours." Jake watched the battle unfold from orbit while his fleet finished mopping up the last enemy ships. The Council's final gamble had failed. Their defensive fleet was destroyed or surrendered, while their allies abandoned them one by one. "Take me down to the surface," he ordered. "I want to be there when we capture their leadership." The assault on the government complex was led by Jake personally. He walked through corridors that had witnessed the decisions that shaped galactic civilization. For thousands of years, the symbols of Council power seemed hollow now that their military might had been broken. Prime Minister Voxtal was found in his private chambers surrounded by the treasures of a dozen conquered worlds. The alien leader sat in defeat while his golden scales had lost their luster. He looked up as Jake entered with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "So the primitive has come to gloat," Voxtal said bitterly. "You have won, but at what cost? The galaxy will burn in chaos without the Council's guidance." Jake studied the defeated leader. "The galaxy burned under your guidance. You destroyed entire species because they didn't meet your standards. You caged others because they threatened. Your power, that ends now. What do you intend to do with me? Put you on trial for crimes against sentient life. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who abuse their power." Voxtal's eyes widened in surprise. "You're not going to execute me? That would make you a martyr. Justice is more powerful than revenge." The capture of the Council leadership marked the end of organized resistance. Across the galaxy, loyalist forces laid down their weapons as news of the capital's fall spread. The empire that had ruled for millennia had collapsed in a single day. Jake found himself in an unprecedented position. He commanded the largest fleet in galactic history, while dozens of species looked to him for leadership. The primitive human had become the most powerful being in known space. Dr. Carter joined him in the captured council chambers. What now? We've destroyed the old order, but we need to build something to replace it. Jake looked out at the city below where human and allied soldiers maintained order among the population. The responsibility was overwhelming, but he had learned from the council's mistakes. We don't rule, he said firmly. We serve. The galaxy doesn't need another empire. It needs a democracy where all species have a voice. The establishment of the Galactic Federation took months of negotiation. Representatives from every species met to draft a new form of government based on equality and mutual respect. The humans who had been cast aside as primitives became the moral leaders of the new order. Amy Rodriguez was placed in charge of technological development. Her innovations would be shared freely among all member species rather than hoarded by a ruling elite. The rapid advancement of galactic civilization began immediately. War Chief Gorth became the Federation's first Minister of Defense. His warrior culture adapted well to the role of protecting rather than conquering. The Krillians found purpose in defending the weak instead of exploiting them. Dr. Helen Park established the Federation Science Council. Her research into faster-than-light travel and energy manipulation would unlock secrets that had been hidden for millennia. The galaxy entered a new age of discovery and exploration. Years later, Ambassador Silthin stood before the Federation Assembly as a representative of the reformed Alterian Republic. The alien who had once called humans barely evolved primates now served the government they had created. The species I once dismissed as primitive has revolutionized galactic civilization, he addressed the assembly. They have proven that true advancement comes not from age or technology, but from the courage to challenge injustice. Jake watched the proceedings from the gallery. He had refused all offers of formal leadership, preferring to serve as an advisor and elder statesman. The galaxy had moved beyond the need for emperors and dictators. Rick Stone approached him during a recess in the session. Any regrets about how it all turned out? Jake considered the question. I regret the lives lost. I regret the years of suffering under council rule. But I don't regret fighting for what was right. The galaxy is better now than it was before. It's not perfect, but it's better. Every species has a voice. Every civilization has a chance to grow and develop. That's what we fought for. Dr. Carter joined them as the session resumed. The latest reports show colony ships from 12 different species working together to explore the outer rim. They're finding worlds that the Council never bothered to investigate. The exploration efforts represented everything the new galaxy stood for. Species that had once been enemies now worked side by side to push the boundaries of known space. The spirit of cooperation had replaced the old patterns of domination and oppression. The Council spent so much energy maintaining control that they forgot about discovery, Carter continued. We're finding ancient ruins, new forms of life, even evidence of civilizations that existed before the Council was formed. Jake nodded. The galaxy was bigger and more mysterious than anyone had imagined. The Council's narrow focus on maintaining power had blinded them to wonders that lay waiting to be discovered. Colonel Hayes approached them carrying a datapad with the latest military reports. The last holdout systems have agreed to join the Federation. Complete galactic unity for the first time in recorded history. What about the war crimes trials? Jake asked. Former Prime Minister Voxtel was sentenced to life imprisonment. Most of the other council